Hello everyone, and welcome to WriterSpeak, dedicated to the written word and those who produce it. I am your host, Jeane Slone. I've written 3 historical fictions: She Flew Bombers, She Built Ships, and She Was an American Spy During World War II. I am also a distributor of local authors' books. Today in the studio, I would like to introduce Eric Crumley. He is the author of Stellar Dawn, The Manufacture of Humans. Welcome to WriterSpeak, Eric.
Thank you, Jeannie. It's glad to be here.
It's nice to have you. And Eric has earned a liberal arts degree from Orange Coast College. He is a prolific researcher of the UFO phenomena. Eric has published many letters to the editor and published an impromptu interview with Jesus Christ Superstar head singer Ted Neely in the Florida Tribune. That's one of my favorite plays, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
He has published a full-length article in Surfer magazine with drawings and artwork. Eric has written and recorded 5 original copyrighted songs. He recently finished a pictorial on how to improve your surfing. Well, Eric, you're quite a multi-talented man.
Multitasker.
Yes. The biggest question we always want to know is, why did you write this book, Stellar Dawn?
Originally, it started out as a spoof on Charles Darwin, intended as a screenplay. I believe modern science is wrong in propping up Darwinian evolution on too high of a pedestal. There are other more plausible explanations for our origins, and I try to go into that in a fictionalized way.
What origins would that be?
Well, 2 come to mind. One is the creator, or that God is the origin of life. And the other one, Jeannie, is that there's a possibility that life was seeded to this planet from intelligent beings beyond our solar system, or from outer space.
And what evidence can you give me?
Well, evidence of God and alien life is all around us. Well, maybe not proof of aliens, but it's coming, and it's a lot more logical than Darwin's theory of evolution. Creation or teleology is, as you hear in the news, the argument of intelligent design. And that states that if there's a design, there must be a designer. And in my view, from my studies, I've concluded that that is the more scientific model. After more than 150 years, evolution still has not been proven.
What do you mean by that, not been proven?
Well, yeah, I mean, his theory is off base, and the reason why is they've yet to discover any transitional forms in the fossil record. No matter how they spin it, there's no missing link. They've yet to find one. And his theory, which history shows that even he had doubts about later in his life, is just that, a theory. It's really just a hypothesis. That science has granularized and institutionalized into the only explanation of life on Earth. There are other explanations that deserve a voice also, and that's all I'm saying.
I really don't know what you mean by that, deserved voice. Can you explain that more?
Yeah, the schools, I mean, I have, kind of an answer for that question, but you have the main theory of evolution being taught in science, primarily high school and colleges and upper academia, and they don't give a fair voice to teleology, argument by intelligent design, or to creation theory, And these other theories are essentially not allowed in our public institutions. And so that's what I mean. And these other, the basic creation theory deserves a voice. So you could have a class, you don't have to, it's just a theory, And it's become strikingly obvious in molecular biology that something or someone has most likely designed our intricate DNA. It's simply, they found out too complicated to have come from nowhere by chance. Many discoveries have been made since Darwin's time that render his ideas obsolete. And science knows this now. They just don't know what to do about it. He's now become the elephant in the living room, but nobody wants to admit it. Take, for example, the construction of the eye, the human or an animal. Science now knows, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that the eye was manufactured by something. They just don't know who or what. This book is an attempt to explain our origins through fiction and shed some light on the falsehood of institutionalized evolutionary theories so prevalent in education today that have yet to be proven.
So why would you even call your book science fiction, since it seems like it's more an academic subject you're talking about?
That's a great question. I like to think of it as science faction. I had to make it a fiction, admittedly, because many concepts, in the work are unprovable, like the existence of extraterrestrials in our midst. So this is only my second attempt at fiction, and the first is going to be the sequel to Stellar Dawn.
I like that concept, the term you use, science faction.
Well, that's the attempt. People might question whether it's fact or not, but that's the idea.
Well, it sounds like you invented a new genre.
Well, I kind of borrowed it, but there's really no specific genre called that now. So.
Yeah, I would continue to use that word. I think it would get people to listen closer to you by using science faction.
Maybe I will.
I know that you have a new book in the works. What is the title? Do you have a title for it already?
Yeah, that was actually the first book, and I kind of put that on the back burner, and I'm introducing Stellar Dawn as the first in a series. The second one is Invisible Horizon, and that's about the Palladians, our distant cousins, come here to help save us from economic and environmental catastrophe or extinction.
What do you mean by economic ruin?
Well, yeah, the good aliens in the story are very concerned about the mismanagement of our economy. In the sequel, I depict them as trying to help us manage our huge, unsustainable debt. And they also are helping us through kind of a fighting of the large corporations. They're helping us fight the environmental problems that we're facing in the story. Oh. And they don't understand us on so many levels as portrayed in the story.
So it's going to be a continuation of what you've written,
The main protagonist in the first story comes back to Earth, several centuries later and has to kind of help us clean up the mess that we've made of ourselves.
Oh. Well, we should get back to Stellar Dawn, and I'd love to hear you read a teaser part in it, so not to give it totally away.
Okay, well, thank you. I'd like to do that, and I picked a part, a subtitle called The Secret.
Oh, good.
The scientists gazed out to the horizon over the vast delta of gold dust and swampland. 2 moons, 2 faded stars, and the main sun were clearly visible as they hung like ornaments in the early dawn sky. A cool offshore breeze hugged the low-lying brush on its way to the great sea beyond the empty marsh. He saw a few cranes gliding gracefully off in the distance toward the north of the panoramic morning airscape. The scent of crisp pre-dawn dew ascended gently up through his nostrils, or through the thin orifice of his nostrils, with the large birds moving north. Playdamo knew the classic warm summer breeze was on its glorious way. Otherwise, the vast expanse of the silt ponds lay still. He quietly floated on his footboard towards his morning's objective. Although it was only a seemingly menial task he had undertaken on that distant alien dawn, he surmised all too well that it could be the beginning of something very great, or he intuitively feared something potentially disastrous. He really didn't know what the source had planned beyond the mere physical creation of this new species. The Grand Council had transcribed plans for their genetic makeup only. They were told that humans would have something in much greater amounts than most any universal beings had up to that time. The professor pondered what it indeed might be as he continued scanning the delta for the best spot to procure that day's samples. A sinister thought popped into his mind. Oh no, Yawin, you're not going to do that. Oh, God, no. A plea to the Almighty reverberated in his mind's eye. In an almost reprimanding and parental tone, he protested silently to his Maker. Being somewhat embarrassed by what to him were unusual feelings, he exposed his psychic and foreboding thoughts. They will destroy the universe. Oh, God, no, he muttered quietly under his breath, again protesting to his Lord. Playdamo did not understand why the great I Am would do something so seemingly foolish. He hesitated to appear irreverent or ungrateful, but the vast conclusion he was beginning to draw had far-reaching, irreversible, and potentially irreparable consequences. How grave? Yep, he had reasoned it out. Man was to be given, just like his great maker Yahweh, the unrestricted use of his free will. Imagine that, Playdamo said, continuing his most internal dialogue. Total freedom of choice. Huh, who would have known? He pondered. I won't tell the others. He promised himself. He felt sick to his stomach and almost wanted to abort the mission before it had even started. He wished he had never figured it out. Things would have remained so much easier, less pensive, and more joyful. Oh well, he silently resigned to himself as he tried to forget the foreboding thoughts of doom, devastation, and catastrophe. He'd continue on anyway in quiet forbearance and long suffering. He skated on his footboard back to the lab, sample in hand. Actually, the 2 quadrants of pond silt containing the trace minerals of cosmic gold dust hovered on a separate footboard brought along for that purpose. He towed them behind with a telepathic tether as he glided along the planked walkway that meandered over the marsh back to more solid sand. As he rode back, he tried to put the thoughts of his early morning epiphany out of his mind.
You know, I can just really visualize a movie when you're reading that. It sounds like a movie script to me.
That's encouraging. That was the original idea, and then everybody said you have to write a book if you want to make a screenplay. So
yeah,
that's why the book's so short. It was intended as a screenplay. So I'm glad you got that. I appreciate that kind of feedback.
Yeah, I could visualize everything very clearly.
Oh, great.
Very well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have a feeling you must do a lot of research. What type of research do you do to do your writing?
Well, in addition to reading many books on UFOs and abductions, which scared the living daylights out of me, I read over 30 books, and I was just like, oh, God, do I have to read another one? And we also saw every possible movie ever made on aliens, except for the ones that have evil aliens. Mine in the story are friendly and are here to help.
You mean like E.T.?
Yeah, they're more like E.T. rather than, Aliens, the series. And it also is based on the first chapter of Genesis. So it was easy to write. I just opened up to chapter 1 and just embellished that, I have tall, long-haired beings from Pleiades, or the Pleiadian constellation, coming here to help us spawn on a little planet I call Little Bretheria in the book. Mm-hmm. And that's how the story evolves. And then I read a lot of books, but I also received a lot of images, just sitting down with a pen in my hand. I write by hand, I don't write like this.
Oh, I see. Do you use the internet at all, or any factual books?
Yes, quite a bit. The first book I read was on astronomy. And my first editor said I didn't know anything about astronomy. But I read that thing cover to cover, and I said, yes, I do. As I borrowed Jupiter's moon, Eptis, if I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah,
but
it seems like you'd immediately start researching astronomy.
Yeah, so astronomy was the first, and then I kind of embellished there's a lot of spurious works, as you can imagine, in ufology, and a lot of stuff is unreliable. But it doesn't mean that some of it's not. There's just simply too much out there. And then the internet, I used the internet later. There's what they call Federation website. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine says, you got to go on the website. And I did some research online, but honestly, I was afraid it would cloud my perspective. Mm-hmm. Then they would be doing the thinking for me from the internet rather than from what I was reading and what I was receiving.
So tell me, what do you think of George Norrie's radio show, which I've heard.
Well, Norrie's great. A friend of mine got me his number. I like the show. I think they'll take something like this about aliens coming to the planet. They do a lot of that kind of stuff. I got an endorsement from Eric von Daniken, and he's been on Ancient Aliens. You know, he wrote Chariots of the Gods. It was very encouraging to have him. He read my book and liked it. It was just incredible. And so...
That's wonderful. You should get him to write you a review.
He did. He didn't write me a review. You know, he's getting way on in years. He said that I can use his comments. And they will be on the website, alieningenesis.net. And he says, of course you can use my comments.
You could put that in your new book.
Yeah, and well, he said it should be a movie story, but he's speaking in Scandinavian, and so he means it should be a movie. He called it, I enjoyed it thoroughly. It should have been a movie story. But it was really encouraging.
That's wonderful.
You know, to have, you know, him look at that. As far as George Norrie, I wanted to interview with you first, and then I'm going to take an interview and send it. They need something. And they, incidentally, for those interested, are soliciting people right now. They sent me something I wrote in, and they said, yes, this is what we want, this is our format, this is what we'll take, and if it formulates the guidelines, we'll let you know. So all I have to do is plug in what I have and shoot them a copy, probably a hard copy, of the book, and then wait for their response.
I know that you are quite a blogger. You're a regular blogger.
Yeah, I blog it on my site, but I blogged like, seemed like 100 pages.
On your website, we can read your blogs.
Yeah, I tried to pop them back up. I have a technical advisor who's helping me do that.
Oh, good.
The publisher set the website up for me. So I've kind of called him and said, get those blogs back up, you know.
Good.
And I'm having people buy the book off Amazon.com, but they can also get it off alieningenesis.net.
Oh,
and it's on the back of the book.
That's good to know. Can you say that again?
alieningenesis.net.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, you'll have all, you know, the...
Is that the name of your website?
Yeah, that's the website.
Oh, okay.
And
so if people want to read your blog, they can also comment?
Yeah, there's a place for commenting. Right on the front page.
Oh, good.
Just hit blog, and then you can say anything you want.
Good, because
Send me hate mail.
Well, you want good, mostly good blogging comments, don't you?
Yeah, but you know, the work in the final, at the end of the day, is relatively controversial, and you know, that's why I enjoyed putting it in a fictionalized form. You know, it was fun to write. I hope it was fun to read. You know.
Well, the next book might be science fiction. It would be good to have people following your blog and answering it, and then it inspires you towards your second book for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty much done with that. I've got this other interim project, but yeah, that's good feedback.
Is there anything you wanted to add about Stellar Dawn or your new book that you wanted everybody to hear about?
Well, some people have read Stellar Dawn, and you know, because of all the research that I did, I've crammed a lot of information, you know, both real and unreal, you know, fiction and faction, all in the same short work. So I'm telling people, just read a few pages and set it down, you know, because I've crammed a lot of information in there. It's kind of a disclaimer, so it's exciting, so read a chapter at a time.
I see. So it's something that you should just read a little bit of at a time instead of reading the entire book in one sitting.
Well, yeah, I really think that's the kind of feedback I'm getting. My brother-in-law says, I'll have it done by midnight. I said, it's not that kind of book. It's kind of like the Bible. You can flip it open to any place you want, and there should be something exciting, you know, from A to Z. You flip it open to page 110 and go, whoa, that's interesting. Go back to page 5.
Yeah.
And there'll be something, hopefully, that's interesting. A lot of little tidbits are strewn throughout, you know, some scientific nomenclature throughout the, you know, the work.
How similar will the second book be? Will it really be a second edition of?
When they come back, they're working with this kid, who invents a machine that runs on compressed air. And so they get in trouble with the oil companies, and then there's no real battle. In either book, except for Adam and Eve having sex in the Garden of Eden, there's no sex scenes, there's no violence, there's no cussing. It's very family friendly. Mm-hmm. And the second book's about a 14-year-old kid on the beaches of Sydney who sells these carts. And so, without giving away the whole story, this guy comes back and he says, well, we got to find someone to help us out here. Well, this kid will do. So they get this kid, he says, well, we want you to build this car, And then from there, it pans forward 40 years, and he's in his late 30s, and he's got this big warehouse, and the large powers that be don't like what he's doing, and the idea is kind of an environmental thriller. So there's a lot of chasing going on without a lot of violence. I think there's way too much violence in Hollywood. You don't have to have that violent to tell a good story.
Yeah, I agree.
So the second book, Jeannie, will be more of a story, and I'm hoping to get better at my writing ability, so it becomes more of a story than less of a monologue, and a little bit less preachy.
I like the idea of a 14-year-old character. Who do you think you're modeling that character after? Is it somebody you know or you? Well,
in my research, I read a story. I can't go into too much detail, but when I was 14, I was living at Laguna Beach surfing, and I was never guided into being an entrepreneur. So it's kind of based on me, an old towhead lives on the beach and surfing every day after school. But at any rate, I moved this guy to Sydney. And his grandfather is the heir of the large, it's a large distillery in Scotland. And ironically enough, his dad and mom are teetotalers, they don't drink. But his grandfather owns this distillery. His great-grandfather started it, the Johnny Walker Distillery, so he's a walker. And so I've got these, that's where they get all their money. And it's probably why the aliens choose this guy. He's got plenty of money, and he can build these warehouses and start manufacturing these non-polluting vehicles, kind of like an Elon Musk scenario. So his vacation home is down in Brisbane. So he gets to go back and forth and back and forth. And when he was 14 and a half, he was coming in from surfing on the Point down in Melbourne. It was during the summer, which is the opposite of our summer down in Australia.
Yeah.
And he sees this guy standing on the beach. He thought he was a bum. And he had a hood. He was about 7 foot tall. It kind of creeped him out. But he came in from catching a wave, walked up to the guy, and he said, we got to go he says, I'm going to give you this information. I'll be back in 15 years. He goes, what? So he had this kind of like close encounter. And that's the opening 10 pages.
Oh, good. You shouldn't tell anymore. It sounds great, though. I like the idea of having a 14-year-old character. You might draw an interesting audience with that.
Well, that's why it's clean.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Well, thank you for sharing your book with us, Eric. Stellar Dawn, The Manufacture of Humans. Thank you for being on WriterSpeak.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
WriterSpeak is produced at the C Media Labs in Santa Rosa. We'd like to thank our sponsor, the Sonoma County Gazette. Please join us next time for another interview with a talented author.